evening, everyone. First of all, I would like to thank CBL for giving me this opportunity. And here I am to speak about my favorite book, Man's Search for Meaning. Well, the title is a little sexist. Even women search for meaning, probably deeper meaning. So, taking liberty from the author Viktor Frankl, we will call it Human Search for Meaning. And wherever he's referring to man, let's assume human, both men and women. So, Viktor Frankl, the author, he's a Jewish psychotherapist who was caught in Auschwitz concentration camp of the Nazis. Now, this book is not about the hardships, brutalities, or torture those Jews had to go through, or the deaths that took place. This book is about survival. Those who did survive, why they survived at all. Viktor Frankl attempts to answer this question in this book, and I can summarize the essence of this book in 5 of his quotes. Extremely inspiring, their deep philosophy of life, and I'm sure you would relate with them. Number 1, he says that life is not primarily a quest for pleasure or power. Life is a quest for meaning and purpose. And when you find this purpose, what happens? He says that he who has a why to live for can endure anyhow. This is very deep. And when this how is not in your control, what happens? Then he says that when we are no longer in control of our situation, we are challenged to change ourselves. And that requires inner strength. And what is this inner strength? This 4th point I find extremely powerful. He says, the man whose self-esteem has always dependent on the respect he gets from others is emotionally destroyed. You are never left with nothing as long as you retain the freedom to choose how you feel or respond to a situation you cannot control. So tomorrow, if somebody disrespects me, I hold the freedom to choose whether I feel worthless or I maintain or retain my self-worth and move on. And nobody can take that choice from you. And 5th, never give up hope. These are like 5 gospels of life. I try to embrace these learnings in my own life. So telling you a little bit about me, I grew up as a girl in an Orthodox Muslim family where boys barely completed schooling and girls were married off by the time they were 16. A tragedy became a blessing when I got polio as a child. I was partially paralyzed and I got an opportunity to study instead. So I overheard some of my relatives, advising my parents, oh, you should start saving money for her because you'll have to pay a handsome dowry to get her married off, even to a rickshawala. And that was traumatic to me. And I knew I could not change this reality about me, but what I knew, that I could change the situation around me. I could change the predictive future around me, for me. So I decided that was my first purpose in life. Achieve self-dependence in every form, financial, physical, emotional. Let them seal my fate. They had already sealed it. Well, Muslim, girl, handicapped, what do you expect? But I had decided to change that. I put my life, heart, and soul into my education. That was the only window to freedom and empowerment. Fast forward, I excelled in education. I did very well in my exams. I was one of the top 5 All India rank holders in 12th board. I completed engineering in computer science, and that was after I studied MBBS for 1 month and changed, left it and joined engineering because they used to believe that medicine is for girls. And engineering is something they can't do. So I decided to do engineering, computer science. I worked as a semiconductor engineer in a company called Texas Instruments in Bangalore for 3 years. I then did MBA from IIM Bangalore and worked as a management consultant in United States for 2 years. And I was making pretty good money. And one thing I would like to emphasize that all of my achievement is entirely based on my merit and competence. I never used any disability quota anywhere. In fact, there was a time when I would really, try to hide my disability. I could not come to terms with it. I did not accept it till one day, one of my friends taught me how to embrace it, how to own it with pride, without any apology or embarrassment. So today, I limp with pride and I'm not embarrassed and I don't care about it. And that's when my second purpose struck, that I was able to get opportunity and disrupt my destiny. Now is the time to give back. Now is the time that I have to make sure that all the children with similar disadvantages in their lives should also have access to similar opportunities in their lives and change their destinies. And that's when in early 2013, I quit my job in the US. I came back to India and chose Uttar Pradesh to work, one of the most challenging, uncharted territory I could have chosen. Though I'm not from UP, I've never lived there. My father was in Air Force, so I have grown up in multiple cities. And to give you a perspective, Uttar Pradesh has a population larger than entire Brazil, and some of its HDI index is worse than Sub-Saharan Africa. And I chose Right to Education, which promises equal opportunity and equal access to education to every child, regardless of their socioeconomic background. So there's a provision which requires private schools to reserve 25% seats for poor children. In UP, you will not believe, it has got 6 lakh seats every year. That is 30% of the country's total 21 lakhs. And can you believe how many, or can you imagine how many admissions had taken place in 2014? Only 54. And that was because of resistive state policies and fierce resistance from some of the handful of influential private schools. So I moved media, government, and judiciary to change the situation. And whatever I did is the stuff of a movie, a proper Bollywood masala movie. And for the sake of time, I'll not get into that. In short, I'll tell you what we did. We did fierce advocacy, we ran implementation drive with the government. We won legal cases against some of the country's stalwart lawyers like Shanti Bhushan and Abhishek Manu Singhvi, and even braved some of the personal threats and attacks. And we were able to activate this policy and impact not 96,000. Today the number is 1,54,000. Children have already been impacted. And I'm currently running this year's campaign, and my target is 1 lakh children. So by June, July, you will have 2,55,000 children. And let me show you how does it look like. So this is the graph. Can you see it? It's not visible. So from 54 to 1,54,000 children so far. And how does it really look like? What does it mean? So let me introduce you to Khushi Ram and Tina. They're 6 years old, living in 2 contrasting worlds of the same city. Khushi Ram is from Dalit and untouchable community. His father does the most menial job of stitching dead bodies recovered from accidents or crime scenes. His family is ostracized by the society, and Khushi Ram became a kachra wala, collecting garbage from big, beautiful homes in Lucknow. And in one of the homes lives Tina, 6 years old, daughter of a doctor who earns 6-figure salary. She goes to one of the elitist private schools, has good set of toys, books, tutors, everything. Now, can you imagine Khushi Ram and Tina sitting side by side in the same classroom of the same school and studying together? That's what RTE makes happen. Today, Khushi Ram and Tina, both of them go to the same school and study together in the same classroom, and have already been doing it for 3 years now. So as Khushi Ram proudly says, जिसे देखा करते थे हम दूर से, वहाँ पढ़ते हैं अब गुरूर से. I now plan to impact tens and thousands, lakhs, millions of such children, not only through RTE, but also unlocking several welfare schemes like apprenticeship. And we work with the government and unlock welfare state policies to bring about institutional reform. The task is very hard. And every morning, when I'm terribly exhausted and I don't feel like waking up, I still do. And I get up and get ready for the next day, because I cannot afford to fail. For the sake of that girl with similar situation as mine, to look up to me and believe with conviction that I too can succeed because she did. Thank you.